You're in the middle of July and that HVAC stops working. All those people that were whispering in your ear saying, hey, it's a great time to buy. It's a great time to buy. When that HVAC goes out, those people will be nowhere to be found. Welcome to episode 3 of the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate goal for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, we will be discussing how long should you rent before buying a home. It's a question that we get all the time as realtors. It's a question that sometimes people may be afraid to ask because of oftentimes the fact renting is typically looked down on in our society. There's a lot of times where people are, I don't want to say ashamed, but they don't really readily want to admit that they may be renting, especially depending on what area you live in the country, right? If you're in a bigger city like New York, that may be the norm out there. But in a lot of other places, people are trying to get over the hump of renting and into home ownership. And so people are often wondering, okay, how long should I wait? How long is too long? Am I ready right now? Do I need to wait a little bit longer? These are all questions that are kind of swirling around in people's minds as they try to figure out what they should do next and how long they should be in those positions. So we're going to unpack a lot of the things that we typically hear from people who are renting and help you determine what works best for your situation. There are 1.5 million realtors in this country. Many of us believe in the goal of home ownership. However, we often have differing opinions and views in the path to home ownership. And unfortunately, I hear things a lot of times that I am not in agreement with at all that come from different people in the industry. And one of the things that you often hear in many cases is they are bashing the process of renting. You'll hear a lot of realtors say, you need to stop renting. You're throwing your money away. You're paying somebody else's mortgage. Why would you ever rent? It makes no sense. And they're just trying to use these scare tactics to essentially rush people into the process of buying a home. Not everyone is prepared or ready or in a good situation to purchase a home, right? It may not be the best situation for everyone. Whether or not it's a good idea for you to buy, the answer to that question changes dramatically based on who you're asking. So you can't just make a blanket statement across the board and say that renting is the worst thing for anyone to do across the board. It can change based on who you're talking to and what their situation is. We hear a lot of people who are trying to rush people into that process and say, no credit. You don't have a down payment. You don't have savings. You got a questionable job security. Don't worry about it. We'll find a way to get you in a house. And that type of mentality is what gets us in the issue or the debacle that happened during the 2008 housing market recession, right? That's how we ended up in that situation. We had people who were in no way, shape, or form ready to be buying or in a position to be buying, getting into houses. And so we want to make sure we do what's best for you as the homeowner or as the potential homeowner in that situation. And you need to ask yourself several questions. So again, we're going to go through that in this episode. I don't want to rush you into that process. Dave Ramsey has a quote that I love. He says, renting is not wasting money. Renting is buying you patience while you're getting ready to buy a home. And that is a wonderful way to look at things, right? You're not just wasting your money. You're buying time to make sure that you have everything in order to make that move so that when you do move forward on that home purchase, you're actually ready and you have all your ducks in a row and everything ready to go. Now, of course, there's always going to be some people who already have everything in order. They're just scared to take that leap of faith. And they sometimes may need a kick in the pants. They may need someone to tell them, hey, go ahead and buy. And they may need that push to get into the market. But more times than not, it's usually someone who is not ready to make that move. And we're trying to get them into a situation that they are not properly or appropriately prepared for. Some of the advantages to renting. We'll go through those as well. So let's see. One of the advantages It buys you time, like I said with the Dave Ramsey code, it buys you time for preparing for that home purchase. It gives you the time to make sure that you have everything in order, and you're not having to worry about all the other problems or potential issues that come along with home ownership. You're able to focus more of your time, energy, and attention into getting your down payment saved up, building up the credit, and all those other things that kind of help you get in the best position possible. The other thing is that you, as a renter, don't have to worry about repairs. You don't have to worry about maintenance or anything else, right? If something breaks down, you're just making a phone call. You're not having to worry about, oh my goodness, how am I going to get the money together to be able to pay for this? That's the landlord's problem. That is not yours. And so that is a huge benefit to being able to rent as opposed to buying. And then also you have a little flexibility in moving, right? Most traditional leases are usually on a year-to-year basis. And so if you get let's say a dream job offer in a different state and you need to move unexpectedly further away, you can see like if there's a subleasing option, you can see if there's a way to try to get out of the lease, or if they'll work with you in some cases, or if they want it all. Again, the worst case scenario, you're only locked into that lease for a year. If you own a home and you get that job offer that's across the country, if we're in a situation where the market is not doing well, right? If the market is doing terribly and it's taking forever for homes to sell, you may be in a situation where you're trying to figure out how in the world you're going to be able to pay multiple things. You might be forced into being a landlord in some cases if you are trying to avoid having to sell at a loss. There's just a lot more at stake when you have something as permanent as home ownership as opposed to renting, which is typically on a year-to-year basis. So those are some of the main advantages. There's always going to be more, but those are a few of the main ones. A few disadvantages: rent is likely going to increase every year unless you live in a rent-controlled area, or if you live in a place where you just have a really kind landlord who's willing to work with you and keep your rent the same. Your rent is going to be going up every single year. Sometimes it might be maybe $30, $40. Sometimes it might be $100 or $200. Like it just depends. You are at the mercy of whatever that landlord decides. And so you have to keep that in mind. Another disadvantage is that the landlord is not required to renew your lease. We often think about the lease in terms of what restrictions it places on us as the tenant, but very rarely do we think about how the landlord also has several rights with that lease being on a year-to-year basis. The landlord, if it's a residential rental, the landlord could wake up and say, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and cash out and just sell this property. And at which case you're going to be scrambling to either find a new place or hope that the new person who buys it is also a landlord and willing to let you stay there. If it's a apartment complex or something like that too, and you have not been the ideal tenant, let's say you've been paying your rent late consistently, or you've been violating the lease in other ways, they could very well just up and say, you know what, we're not going to renew your lease, in which case you're having to find something completely new. So again, that landlord is not required to renew your lease, and that's not a problem you're typically thinking of when you own a home. And then last, when you make your rent payment, when the first of the month comes around and you make that rent payment on time, the sole benefit to you making that rent payment is that you receive shelter in return for the next month. Now, I don't want to downplay that or sound ungrateful, because there's a lot of people out there who would love to have shelter for the next month. But when you make that rent payment, that is the sole benefit to making that payment, is that you get the opportunity to stay in that rental unit for the next month. That's what that payment buys you. When you make a mortgage payment on the first of the month, that gives you not only shelter, but it also gives you several other benefits as well. You get to build equity, right? You're paying down your mortgage bit by bit, and that is essentially building your equity in the home. It's almost like a forced savings plan. So that's one of the main benefits to home ownership. But like I said, you get the shelter, you get to build equity. You also get a tax write-off. If you have a mortgage, you get to write off the mortgage interest that you have. So that's another benefit. And because it's a debt, you are also boosting your credit score every time you make that payment on time, right? And so there are several benefits that you get as a result of that mortgage payment that you may not always get with a rent payment. Now, there are some programs out there where you can have the option to use your rent payments and report them to a credit agency. I have yet to see if that has a major or a meaningful impact in your credit score. But more times than not, you can make your rent payment on time for years at a time and it have no real impact or a benefit to helping you purchase a home or helping your credit score. And so, like I said, when you make that mortgage payment, you get several benefits as opposed to rental payments. You really just get the shelter, and that is it on that side of things. So when you're trying to determine how long you should go about the process of renting before you buy, you really have to look at it and say, okay, what are some reasons or some things that would keep me in or make it a better idea for me to continue renting? There's 4 scenarios that I've thought of, and I'm sure there are more out there, but there are 4 main ones that I typically run into with most people that I'm working with. 4 scenarios where it's likely going to be better for you to continue renting. And we'll kind of unpack these one by one as we go along. The first one, your personal finances aren't yet in order. So that's one of the scenario where it might be better for you to continue renting on if you can. Second one, you have a high likelihood of being moved abruptly, right? So you're in an industry or a job or a profession that is going to move you at a moment's notice and you really have no control over it. So if you're in the military, if you work for a company that moves people all over, I know we used to always joke that IBM stands for I've been moved, right? So if you work for a company that is constantly moving people at a moment's notice, that's another situation where it might be better for you to continue renting. Third, you're trying to learn a new area. Right? You're just moving to a place that you have no familiarity with. You don't know anyone there. You're trying to figure out more about it. That's another option. And then the fourth, you don't see any houses on the market you like enough to buy. So let's go through each of those and kind of unpack each of those and kind of see what I've typically noticed in the industry myself and reasons why I believe that it might be better for you to rent in any 4 of those scenarios. The first one, your personal finances aren't in order. This is something that you will hear me say a lot. I've said it for years and I will continue to say it as long as I'm a realtor and even past that point. The majority of your decision when you're trying to buy a house and determine whether or not you're ready to buy, the majority of that decision should be focused on your personal finances, not the market. Okay. A lot of times people will say like, oh my goodness, interest rates are so low, or oh my goodness, houses prices are dropping. Like this is the ideal time to buy. You guys need to get out there and buy a home. If your personal finances are not in order, you need to stay put. I don't care what anybody else is saying. I've seen so many situations where friends and families kind of got in people's ears and told them, it's a great time to buy. You need to buy. You need to quit renting. You're wasting your money. You're throwing your money away. And they tell them this so much that the person thinks, okay, I don't feel ready to buy. I don't feel like my finances are ready. I don't have enough saved up, but everyone's telling me I need to. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. And they go into buying that house. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you buy that house before you're ready, before you have those funds saved up, you're in the middle of July and that HVAC stops working. All those people that were whispering in your ear saying, hey, it's a great time to buy. It's a great time to buy. When that HVAC goes out, those people will be nowhere to be found. I guarantee you it happens all the time. They are going to say, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And you're going to be thinking, that sorry does nothing for me. I need some money. I need some help paying this. The HVAC contractor doesn't want sorries. They want money. I need someone to help me be able to fix this problem. And you're going to be on your own as a homeowner getting that corrected or getting that fixed. And so again, make sure you have your ducks in a row, your finances in order. We talked about it in the first episode the second episode about how much you need to buy a home, figuring out what that is, making sure that not only that you have those funds, but that you also have an emergency fund as a cushion to protect you when you go to buy that house. You'll never be able to prepare for every emergency or issue that could happen, but having something in place is going to be far better and put you in a much better position than many other people who are just putting all caution to the wind or throwing all caution to the wind and just jumping into that deal. Make sure your personal finances are in order before you make that move. Second, you have a high likelihood of being moved abruptly. We hear horror stories of this all the time, especially you see a lot in military families who get moved constantly all over the place. you don't know what the market is going to be like when it's time for you to move, or when you get called or moved by your company. You hope that it's doing well. You hope that everything is going smoothly. But if it isn't, all right, let's say you buy a house tomorrow. If you know that you may have to move in the very near future, you want to make sure that you have contingencies and plans in place for what you're going to do if that happens. So I'm not saying that if you are in the military or if that you are working at a job that moves people a lot that you shouldn't buy a house. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that you need to make sure that you prepare yourself adequately for what you can do if that does happen before you're ready, or if the market is not doing as well when that time comes, right? So for example, let's say you find a house that you love. You need to go into it with the mindset of, okay, if I get moved next month and I know there's no way in the world that I'm going to be able to sell this house at a profit, am I prepared to take that hit? That could mean that I have some extra savings on hand as a reserve to kind of help soften the blow of that hit. Or it could mean that I am a little more prepared to be a landlord for that property if needed. And when I say you need to prepare for being a landlord, that doesn't just mean, oh, I asked myself, do I feel like I could do that? No, that means like you actually did real research. You went online and you looked to see what rentals are going for in that area, figured out if those numbers match up to what you could work, figure out like, okay, if I am moving to a different state, I likely am going to want a property management company to handle this. Since I'm going to be in a different state, I want someone who's nearby to kind of handle or address a lot of issues, handle background checks, applications. I want someone to help with that. Can I afford to hire a property management group? All these questions are things that you need to ask yourself before you ever move into that situation, especially if you know you are likely to get moved at a moment's notice. You need to know those things ahead of time so that you are not scrambling and making decisions that are detrimental to your finances for wherever you're moving beforehand, right? So those are all things that you need to do if you are in that position, right? So that's the second scenario. Third, you're trying to learn a new area. We get people all the time relocating here. We're consistently ranked in the triangle, at least. We're consistently ranked as one of the top places to move in the country. And so we deal with this a lot, where we have people coming in from different states or different areas. They don't know anyone here. They don't know the area. They don't know anything about it. And one thing that I have learned over the years is that a quote unquote good area is subjective. Right. It's different depending on who you're talking to. What is a good area for you may not be the best area for your friends or for your family members or someone else who's coming to the area. You need to keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out what's the best option or what's a good place for someone to go. I myself, I'm more of a homebody. I love to have people over. I love to host dinners and play games and kind of hang out at the house. I hate going to the club. I hate going to parties and all this stuff like that. It's just not my scene. That's not my vibe. That's never been my vibe. And I know that about myself. And so for me, I prefer a larger house that is more in the suburbs or in an area where I have more space and more land. That's what I would prefer. But I have some friends who would very much love to be in the heart of downtown in a 700 square foot condo, but it's right there in the midst of everything, right? So they can go party and they can go club and they can go grab a beer. They can go do all these things with their friends at a moment's notice. That sounds miserable to me. And so, like I said, if you asked either one of us what is our idea of a good area to live, we're going to have drastically different opinions. And it's not to say that one of us is wrong or one is right. It's just our personal preference, right? And so those are things that you need to keep in mind. People will often reach out to people that they work with or people that they meet randomly and ask them, where's a good place to live? You can't always just go off of other people's opinion. You need to find out for yourself. And so if you're moving to a new area, you have no familiarity there, it might be beneficial for you to take just a year just to rent and figure out, okay, what areas do I like? What things do I like to do? And then decide where you want to move, right? Because again, you don't want to rush into buying something in a place that you hate. And now you're hoping that the market is doing well enough for you to move out of there quickly and get to a place that you do like, right? Buying a house is a big decision. It's not something that you can just make flippantly, right? It is a lot of different factors and things that are moving that can change what you're doing. And so you want to make sure that you have thought out that decision appropriately before you ever get in there. And then the last scenario, you don't see any houses on the market you like enough to buy. I stole this from another agent, but I really like it, and I tell a lot of my buyer clients the same advice. When you are going to look at a house, there is going to be no house that is 100% exactly what you want. And if you think that house does exist, or you think you found that house, live there, and I guarantee you won't feel that way. There's always something, right? There's always something that people wish they could change about a particular house. It's got everything I want, but this doesn't quite fit what I want, right? There's always something that a house. And so the goal is to find an 80-10-10, right? That's the goal. You want something that, if you have a list of all the things that you want or need in the house, 80% of those things, the goal is to find a house that fits 80% of the things on that list. And then 10% of the things you would like to be something that may not match up with what you want, but you can change it, right? So 10% of the things that you can change, right? Whether that's paint colors, or maybe like the carpet isn't what you like, or you want to change out the flooring. 10% of things that you may not like or may not fit with you, but you can change it. And then 10% that you can just learn to live with, right? Maybe the lot is situated in a place, or maybe the neighborhood is in an area where you're like, I would prefer it to be over here, but I can learn to live with it, right? So 80% of the things that you want or need, 10% that you can change, and 10% that you can learn to live with. That is the goal. And when you are looking at different houses that are in the area, trying to figure out what works best for you, if you don't see a house that matches up anywhere remotely close to that 80-10-10 goal, it may be a good idea for you to just continue renting and see if some other options hit the market. Whenever I start working with the buyer, I always ask them, when we talk about the criteria they're looking for, I always say, are there any examples currently on the market that match what you're looking for? Because that's going to tell me a lot about how their search is going to go. If you're not seeing absolutely anything that even remotely piques your interest, it might be better for you to just hold off and wait. Because we always talk about on HGTV about how much fun it is to go house shopping and look at these homes and everything like that. House shopping is the fun part. What we rarely talk about, and we definitely don't discuss during HGTV episodes, is the part that comes after you go under contract on said house, right? We don't talk about the inspections, the appraisals, the loan application, all the money that you're spending during that phase just to reach the closing table. We don't discuss that. And the reason we don't discuss it is because it is a miserable process. Nobody likes that part of buying a home. It's the worst part of it. The reason people endure through that process is because they want the home so badly, right? And so think about it. If you make an offer on a home that you sort of kind of like, but not really, you are not going to have the motivation or the will to be able to push through all the other crap that you have to wade through to get to the closing table. And you're likely going to end up wasting a ton of time and money, and you're going to be frustrated with the end result. And so if you don't see anything on the market that's matching what you want, it may be a better idea for you to just hold off and rent and see if other options come available that you do like, or some other opportunities become available. And so those are things that you want to keep in mind. Again, the decision for how long you should rent should always be based primarily on what your personal finances are looking like in those other scenarios that we reference as well. I always am happy to talk with anyone about what works best for your situation. I love going through these discussions and kind of helping people figure out what works best for them. Do not buy into the scare tactics and listen to the people who are trying to rush you into buying a home. Renting is not bad. Renting can be used as a tool to help make sure that you're in the best position possible to buy that house when you're ready and to make those home goals a reality. So I hope that this has been helpful for you all. Again, we'll continue in new episodes as well to unpack these different ideas and these different questions that come up and different things that are going on. If you have questions that you ever want me to address, feel more than free to email that to me or send that in. We'll be happy to go over that as well. I hope this has been helpful for you all. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.